Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
That's right. It's Aggressive Negotiations, the podcast that dares to ask the questions that are on everybody's minds about the Star Wars galaxy. I am one of your hosts, John Mills, and joining me for just another humdinger of an episode, my dear friend, my fellow galactic explorer, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, have you set lightsabers on stun?
Yes, I have. I'm so glad that we've added this setting, John, because, I don't always want to cut off somebody's arm. I don't always, want to, have to behead somebody. It just gets messy sometimes. And sometimes you just need the person to fall down.
You're just trying to get a point across. You're not trying to do any permanent damage. That's a very important thing. And of course, a very important thing is for everybody to get over there, go over to your podcatcher of choice, give a rating and review. We would appreciate it. It's your way of expressing to us what it is you think of this show. And hopefully that's a good thing. We, of course, also have our mailbag that we get from thenerdparty.com/contact. We have a couple of notes sitting in there that we will get to. For those that have sent notes, we appreciate you. We see you. We thank you. We're getting there. We're working through all of these things. And speaking of working through things, Matt, it's a fun topic tonight because, I remember in years past, people would always say Star Wars or Star Trek, and it always bent my brain because it was like, well, why not both? Like, was there actually a competition at any point? I don't think so. Yeah. But stemming from that, just idly sitting there one day, here's the question is, when you get down to it, Star Wars is definitely a clash of personalities as much as it is ideals. So boiling it all down, which Star Trek captain do you think would fare best in the Star Wars universe? You're literally through some dimensional rift, you pick up Captain whomever, you drop them off in the Star Wars galaxy. Who's going to rise to the top? Who's the cream that's going to be able to make it through in this different milieu that has been set up? Now, I'm going to put one restriction on the answers to this.
Okay.
You can't go in and pull some obscure captain's name from a novel that came out in like 1996 or something like that.
I would never do that.
We got to stick with stuff that's a well-known captain, a captain that people will have seen. And I will say it still counts if you go to, say, Star Trek Picard season 3, because there's a captain sitting in there that I think is a valid answer to this as well.
Yes. Ooh, wow. Yes. I'm not going to pick that one though.
Okay.
And this might actually really surprise you.
Okay.
The person I'm going to go with is Captain James T. Kirk from the Kelvin timeline.
Oh my gosh, that's the ultimate mix-up. Whoa.
Right?
Okay, so...
Right?
All right.
Because, come on, Chris Pine and his portrayal is such kind of a cross between Shatner from the original series and the Prime timeline, and almost like the roguishness of like a Han Solo, right?
Okay.
And so that's why I'm going to go with the Chris Pine Kirk, because I feel like he could easily fit his way into basically being a scoundrel in the Star Wars universe, akin to Han Solo, because he's a character who can kind of talk his way out of anything. And so that's why I really do feel like this character would be a great fit for the Star Wars universe, that you could just drop him in and he'd be able to figure it out.
See, the thing is, it's funny because there were so many people that pointed out that Star Trek 09, because, it's pre-Disney buying, Star Wars and Lucasfilm from Lucas.
Right.
They viewed Star Trek 09 as Abrams making his own Star Wars movie with a different person's franchise.
Yep.
So I can see that sort of thing and see how that lines up. Now, the thing is, Oh man, see, that's a great way to throw a curveball because I hadn't considered that there are multiple Kirks you could choose from.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool thing.
Well, you asked the question, and my goal was to bring it.
Well, you definitely brought it there. I really thought that mentioning Captain Shaw from Picard season 3 would mix it up a little bit because, I'm also not going to pick Captain Shaw, but man, oh man. The thing is, okay, I agree. Kelvin Timeline Kirk, played by Chris Pine. I would argue that version of Kirk is best suited to Star Wars, believe it or not, in Star Trek Beyond. I think that's the ultimate refinement of the character because we see him also able to do a lot of action beats that further support your argument.
I agree.
He's a little bit more mature.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
But coming back to Captain Shaw, like there's a part of me that still wants to pick him. But I think it's just because I love the character and the way he's portrayed because he's just he's such a cool character. Like if Picard season 3 wasn't as terrific as it is, he would still be a terrific aspect of season 3 of that show. As I reflected on it, that my heart wanted to pick Sisko, like really wanted to.
Same.
And the thing is, I'm trying to talk myself out of it, but do you think that Sisko in my brain is a contender because we have the Bajoran mysticism aspect that plays into it? Like, does that make me immediately think that Sisko would lend himself to a galaxy with the Force in it?
Okay. See, I love what you're thinking there because I do get the sense like Sisko could be a Mace Windu style character, but one that isn't so driven necessarily by the rules. And so I 100% agree with you that this could be a character that really fits into the Star Wars universe because of this. And I think it's interesting too because Sisko would also, I think, be a character then who has a lot of depth to him, right? Like that he's not just kind of the straight up hero Jedi character. There's dimensions to him. He contains multitudes,
right?
So I could absolutely see him being a character that really and a captain that you could drop into the Star Wars universe and kind of see him be able to fit in, especially very interestingly into the Jedi Order. Maybe a character then who feels a little bit like a Qui-Gon Jinn, right? Where he's kind of an outlier, willing to kind of do his own thing, possibly, which obviously we saw throughout the history of Deep Space Nine. So,
yeah, but as much as I want to pick Sisko, I would actually wind up, and this is, I think, a real dark horse candidate. I would actually wind up picking Archer from Enterprise.
Okay. You got to tell me more about that.
All right. So Archer from Enterprise he's out there. He's encountering, the unknown, the unexplored. He's out there winging it. He's out there doing these giant adventure story arcs that harken back to the 1960s Kirk, but it has a little bit more, it is a terrible word to use in relation to this sort of thing. It has a little bit more realism to it. Like it's a little more grounded in terms of how it happens, in terms of how he goes about it. And I would argue that Archer would be the type of space adventurer who would lend himself to moving through the Star Wars galaxy because of all of the myriad things that would be so foreign to him. I'm like, he feels like a Clone Wars captain. And by that, I mean, not that he feels like the captain of a ship on the Clone Wars, but he feels like that era of Star Wars to me. he feels like a character that could easily work within the Clone Wars because you have all of these stories that are about encountering wild stuff that you hadn't considered even a possibility by that point. And so I think Archer gives us the broadest range of experience when it comes to that.
I really like the way that you put that, especially with thinking about that Archer is a character who's experiencing the Star Trek universe for the first time. And, so much about Star Wars is about kind of coming across things that you've never come across, hero's journey, all of those type of things. And so that's, I can totally see him then being able to be kind of plopped into this universe and be able to be on a lot of different sides, right? You could see him being able to kind of fit into various factions in the Star Wars universe in a way that kind of fits. So you could see him being able to fit into a scoundrel or maybe an underworld. You could see him being somebody who maybe possibly grows into a powerful politician. You could see him being somebody who is a Jedi, and willing to explore that. And I think, when you talked about the Clone Wars idea, especially with what we saw him as a character in season 3 of Enterprise. I think you could really see that character then maybe possibly being a part of like the Onderon type of rebellion type of story.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah, I like that. Good pull. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I agree with that pull. I think that's a really interesting choice. And I've always really loved Archer as a character anyway, and I'm a huge fan of Enterprise. I think it's a show that just doesn't really get its due, and is sadly maligned for really no good reason.
It just had the misfortune of coming on air at the wrong moment. I'll throw in there also, Archer talks to his dog in the same way that we've seen like Luke and Anakin talk to R2. So I think that might be playing a little bit. But I really love this, your idea of Kelvin Kirk, because that really does work. That makes me want to go back actually and rewatch Star Trek Beyond, because that is, just as a final thought, I still really want to see Justin Lin do a Star Wars movie. I look at Star Trek Beyond and a guy able to deliver really unique action sequences. I'd love to see that come into Star Wars. But that is a discussion for a different day, obviously. One
thing I want to throw at you before we get out of here, because I think my wife and I, we're on season 5 of Star Trek The Next Generation. And I think one of the characters, obviously, on that show that I think could easily be plopped in and most interestingly would be somebody like a Captain Picard as a member of the Jedi Order who's a little too stuck in his ways.
I don't... that's interesting. I don't know that I see Picard in Star Wars, except unless you're talking about him in like a Yularen type of role. I could see him as a Yularen type.
Okay. Yep.
But not evil ISB, not evil ISB Yularen.
Yeah. Yep.
Good Yularen. Yularen that I like.
Or you could see him being like, and this is where I think you most likely would have that character, is being a diplomat or a politician. In the Senate, somebody who becomes like a Mon Mothma type of figure, Bail Organa type of figure. Yeah. And so I think those are the places where you could probably see that character. But yeah, that was just watching him. I was thinking, there was something about him that I was like, I could kind of see him just being this Jedi that is on the council and just, is a little bit too dogmatic for his own good. So
what I love most of all is that neither one of us fell on the crutch of Kirk from the original series or the 80s movies, because as much as I love Captain James Tiberius Kirk, especially in the 80s movies, I I just don't see that character translating over into Star Wars. It's another reason I commend you for picking Kirk from Kelvin Timeline, because that, it didn't occur to me to think of him that way. But original Kirk, man, I can't see him. It's such a unique character type, and I wish I knew why. Because the thing is, I hear your arguments for Picard. I think somebody could make arguments for Janeway crossing over. There's an argument for Sisko crossing over. There's an argument for Archer. Man, I just don't see original Kirk crossing over into Star Wars. He's just too uniquely suited to that Star Trek vibe that, I mean, do you agree with me? Do you think there's any argument that original Kirk type could ever make it over?
I think that the interesting part of that Kirk is that he's so intrinsically tied to the TOS Federation ideals.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing that kind of makes it difficult for him to be there.
Yeah.
Because I think it's hard to almost divorce him from that, which seems like almost weird to say. But and I think partly it's not that he doesn't have a roguishness like Chris Pine does, and Chris Pine's Kirk does. I think he definitely has that. But I agree with you. There's just something that's so indelible about him as the captain of the Enterprise, and the way in which he is so wrapped up in discussions of the Federation, the Prime Directive, and all that kind of stuff that, it just seems like it would be a hard thing to, get him on the, get him in the other franchise. So yeah, I mean, some fun picks. Honestly, this is one of those where I want people to respond to us.
Yeah, same.
And tell us what they think, which captain they think would be in Star Wars and why.
Yeah. So, as mentioned before, guys, go over to thenerdparty.com/contact, drop a note for us, let us know what you think. But Matt, people can also bug you over on social media. Where can they find you?
Hit me up on the name Matt Rushing02. Just search whatever platform you're on. If I'm there, you'll find me, and I'd love to be able to talk to you. You can also find me, of course, here on the network with a show called Owl Post. Did that with Drea Kaufman, as we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. You can find me over on the TFM network with a bunch of shows. One's called the 602 Club, talking about all of the franchises that we love outside of Star Trek. Tons of Star Wars talk. John Mills is a frequent guest over there, so make sure you do check that out.
I am.
You'll love it. And a lot of great Star Trek talk, actually. So if you like Star Trek talk, doing shows on Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager, Enterprise, just plenty of great shows over there. And of course, Strange New Worlds is coming back this summer, so we'll be talking about that as well. But John, if people wanted to catch up with you, talk about their favorite Star Trek captains and why they should be in Star Wars, where would they find you?
You can find me on the social networks as Kessel Junkie. Like Matt said for himself, if it's a network that I'm on, that's where you'll find me, as Kessel Junkie. You can find me right here on the network, co-hosting a show with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell called House Lights, where we have a lot of fun, and I find out that Darren and Tristan are wimps who don't appreciate the horror genre in the least, and at least one of them will have their cars set on fire by me at some point in the not too distant future. But Matt, so that I can go back and get my kerosene and find out if there's a blowtorch setting on the lightsaber, I think it's time to go back to the temple and close these negotiations.
Well, with that in mind, the negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.